This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC with my new friend, Assaf Gal, hailing from East Meadow, Long Island. I am from Westbury. We are one town over. We would potentially have been rivals, but you came from a bigger school and a better sports athletic program. So we are here to talk about what you're doing in the fitness industry under crunch, the territory that you put together to grow out of Queens, Bronx, and Brooklyn. So welcome to Halo Talks.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So we initially met through our FDNY Train Like a Firefighter.
That's right.
I think you graduated in the top 5% of that from a physical fitness standpoint.
Thank you. It's feeling good.
So for our listeners, what I want to try and cover today is you've taken the leap to become an entrepreneur. You probably mitigated some of your risk, I think, by going under a brand. So there's going to be a lot of people out there that are listening to this that have a day job and are saying, I really want to get into the Halo sector. And hopefully they use this as a passionate podcast to take that step, but also think about what the opportunities and the risks are. So why don't you talk about growing up in East Meadow and going to Michigan and kind of take us through your journey?
Sure. Thank you. So I'm an immigrant, came from Israel in 1987, and from the beginning, trying to make it work, my father was an entrepreneur, sole proprietor, small business owner, and that's what put me through life and then to University of Michigan. So from the early days, as far as back as I can remember, people would say, what do you want to be? And someone would say a police officer and a firefighter, and everyone kind of knew this thing that they wanted to be. And I just said, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to work with my family.
Back then, that wasn't a very
I didn't use that word. I don't think. I want to have a business is probably what I said.
Right.
But it just always was part of our DNA, and it's the only thing we really saw. So when I went to University of Michigan, the environment around us kind of dictated, it's either sales and trading or investment banking, and you just make the leap to finance. I went to finance, but to private wealth management. So there was definitely a lot of lessons learned there, and a lot of, getting comfortable being uncomfortable, talking to people who were with significant wealth and trying to convince them that they should invest with you. It just wasn't really a passion of mine. So it was good to do, and I'm glad I did that and had those experiences. But there was always in the back of my mind, when am I going to work with my brothers? When am I going to do something for myself? So made the leap to an e-commerce store that one of my brothers had started.
What year was that?
That was in 2008 when the auction market securities froze.
Okay.
We were telling people this is a liquid market and it's just like cash, and then the world turned upside down.
Sure.
And I was an assistant to some financial advisors then, so I made the leap. And
let's stay on that for
sure.
1 second, because I was looking at I was reading something the other day, and everything goes in effectively 10-year cycles. And this quote said that the business cycle is 10 years, but a banker's memory is only 5. So, from a standpoint of what happened in 2008 and having, effectively the luxury of understanding, how that feels as a business person and also living through that, how has that changed the way you think about calibrating risk, or, it's not sunny every day?
I think it just broadens the perspective, right? At that time, just before that, 06, 07, people were saying, you got to invest in real estate in Florida. It literally can't go down. And you're saying, there's this amnesia.
Right.
You just forget that things won't always be how they are right now. And so even though our fast forward now to the couple of gyms we have open, if it's going pretty well, that's great, but I'm constantly on the lookout for how to mitigate risk in the future, how to deal with some sort of, if a competitor opens up across the street, how could we be acting in a way that people would just walk right by them and be like, well, yeah, but that's not this crunch here. So I think it just kind of, not to be hyperbolic or make it like we're always worried, but we always understand that it's not always going to stay like this. So what do we do to protect ourselves?
Great. So yeah, you worked with the e-commerce company. That was a family business?
My brothers and I started it. It was selling solar lights online.
Okay.
We just drop shipped. For the year in business, we probably saw 1 or 2 of the products itself. A lot of great lessons learned there. And one of the lessons learned, or of a couple of them I could probably mention, was just listening to people. We would take the phone calls, and people would say, "Hey, would this light my flag?" And we're like, "What flag? What?" And then over and over again, they'd call and they'd say, "Would this light my flag?" Apparently, there are rules in America that govern how to display your flag. And if you have an American flag outside and it's not illuminated, it needs to be taken down every day.
Wow.
So this is a big country. People have a lot of flags up.
You can leave it up.
So you can leave it up. Exactly.
Wow.
As long as it's illuminated. And big yards, big property, no electricity. A solar light was the perfect solution. So we sourced and we looked for and we, dug and dug and dug.
So you put it on top of the...
There's two main kinds. One was a spotlight that was bright enough for 20-foot poles, and another would literally latch on to the pole. And that was made by a flag company called Valley Forge Flag in Pennsylvania.
Smart.
Yeah, it's great.
So what led you to say, okay, this is interesting, and you're selling effectively to say, I want to get into the fitness, the halo sector, as we like to use, and what was your evaluation period that you gave yourself, and how did you go about putting together either like a scorecard, trust your gut, look at the analysis. A lot of people are looking at different brands and they typically call us up and say, hey, what do you think of Crunch? What do you think of Blink? What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I think it needs to be more granular about like, why am I doing this? Who am I doing it with? Who are the people? So kind of talk us through your thought process and analysis, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. So when we were in the e-commerce space, I kind of just looked around and said, this isn't enough. Winning here wouldn't really be winning. So how can we sell this? And it was a really quick, few week turnaround, and we were on our way. Then when I started, the thing that got me on franchises was I have energy, I have passion. I want to direct that energy, but I want to direct it somewhere. And so if I could be given an operations manual, I'll work the hell out of it. But I don't want to come up with something from A to Z. So I don't want to be a high tech, SaaS company. That's just not my wheelhouse. But owning and operating franchises really seemed like a great fit. So when I did the due diligence it started off with Planet Fitness, and I felt like I owed it to myself and to my family to analyze other businesses as well. So Massage Envy, Jimmy John sandwiches, haircuts for men and boys, just the whole slew of them, because you should really analyze and look under all the rocks and see what's going on there. And to your point, there are different financial models with each one of these, and there's a different level of scalability with them, right? You hear about operators who buy, 60 Planet Fitnesses. That's a thing that you can do in the Halo space or with, low cost, high value gyms. But I remember a phone call with Massage Envy. I said, well, what if I want to buy 10? And the guy was like, well, our best operators really only have 3, because you have to be close enough on the ground and operate it that way. So that was a big part of what kind of sorted out a lot of the businesses that wouldn't work. And fitness is just a passion of mine as well. So it really was a big click.
And were you looking to stay local? Was that, or were you looking across country at the time?
I did have an open mind, thinking about moving to Colorado, west of the Mississippi for Planet Fitness. And then it just was a great confluence of events where Crunch, I thought was the best value proposition. I thought did have the best people. I connected most with the people that were involved. And I live in New York City, and Brooklyn, Bronx, and Queens became available. So that decision was made.
Yeah, I guess, to me, it seems like somewhat of a coup that you were able to get these boroughs. And just for background, we did the original Crunch deal in 2005 with Angelo Gordon, and Crunch Corporate had not developed the franchise system yet. And the guy who was the head of corporate development and looking at new locations, he was in, and he's a good friend of mine, and I'm not trying to razz him or anything. He's not with the company anymore, but he was going to Miami, and he was going to Coral Gables and Coral Springs and places in LA. And I told him over a beer, I said, get a Metro card and don't leave the subway grid, because everyone in New York City knows what Crunch is. Like, go build in Queens, go build in Bronx, go build in Brooklyn, go build in Long Island, because the brand affinity and the distance from, the epicenter of this brand is right here. So how did this become available, and how did you get it?
So there's a great word. It's chutzpah.
Chutzpah.
So I have enough of it.
Chutzpah. Let's tell people what that is in case there are any non-Jews listening.
Yeah, like a blatant disregard for authority, or just a recognition that the world is ours to make, and so just go and try and make it. The worst thing they can say is no.
Right.
So I was on the phone with one of the executives at Crunch, and I said, well, what'll it take to get the Brooklyn, Bronx, and Queens market? Right. Let's just be candid, right? We'd heard about the successes that Planet Fitness had in this market.
Sure.
And I wanted it. And they said, no. And they kept on holding off. And then I just kept asking. And they said, if you could do 10, then we'd do it. And I said, okay, we'll do 10.
Did they have any corporate locations in those boroughs?
Not at that time.
Okay.
They have since, but not yet.
Gotcha. So what's your actual, so you went in there, you asked for the You asked for the full Monty, and you got most of it.
Yeah.
What's your territory look like, and what team did you build when you started to do this?
Sure. Let me just rewind for a moment. You said earlier about the brand Affinity,
right.
And that, talking about entrepreneurs and small business owners and franchising, that is a big part of what you're buying.
Sure.
Right. So to be able to have the luxury and say, I'm opening up a Crunch, and they say, well, thank you. That's huge.
Right.
And it's really hard to value that.
For the customer.
Yeah, for the customer, as the business owner. Because, if you have a Crunch and you go to other parts of the country that are not as familiar yet, you have to educate the consumer.
Right.
And that's expensive and challenging, and there's just friction involved in that.
Sure.
So the territory is Brooklyn, Bronx, and Queens. There's 6.5 million people in that area. And what was the question after that?
The question after that was what team? Maybe. So you got the 10 store development agreement. What was the next step after that?
Finding locations, signing some leases. So I drove around with the head of development for Crunch and started to learn about what it would take to make a successful location, right? Mm-hmm. Ease of access, make sure we had enough visibility, make sure the rent numbers were right, and signed a couple of leases on the same day with the same landlord. And then that was the next phase there was learning how to build a gym and follow the manual.
So when and there's a couple of things, and this came up on another deal we were working on. Did you look at some of the competitors? You say, okay, look, there's a Planet Fitness here. I want to be as close to the Planet Fitness, or I want to be as far away from the Planet Fitness?
So it probably evolved a bit on that thinking. Originally, it was give me some distance. I don't know how to compete, so let me not compete. And then now, again, speaking candidly, I think if you go head to head, Crunch has more in the box and a better value proposition. We go a little bit more premium and think we do a bit of a better job to the consumer rather than just go low price. So if there's a 15,000 foot Planet Fitness across the street from if I'm making a 20,000 foot Crunch, I would love to do that because that's the area where people go to the gym and we could outcompete them. If they're bigger than we are and we have to throw in a group fitness studio and turf, I think that could be challenging.
How have you dealt with the different pricing tiers? Because obviously Crunch New York is, effectively a premium brand, I guess, under the Equinox, price umbrella, as I like to say. Substantially under it, but at least has the ability to play in that premium range. Mm-hmm. So in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, what's your pricing model, and what is the members' understanding of what they're getting?
I think it is first the pricing is the $9.95 low cost space. So we're $14.95, $24.95, and $34.95 depending on the amenity offering, and I think the consumer gets it. Right? If you just say, hey, there's signature clubs in Manhattan, they offer an elevated experience. And so it's an elevated price point, that they just get it. Like if you go to Starbucks in Grand Central Station or Starbucks in Des Moines, it's just probably going to be a different cost cappuccino and consumers accept that. Got
it. So what access level do you have if you're a member of one of your clubs and you come to Manhattan?
It would work the other direction where if you're a signature member and you pay for access to multiple facilities, you're more than welcome to attend ours. It does not work the other direction where if you are a member of a Crunch base location, you'd still have to pay a lower entrance fee per day.
Got it.
Signature.
So given your level of chutzpah and your level of passion and drive, you got 2 locations now and you've got a third on the way. Mm-hmm. Talk to our audience about consistent and programmed growth, and not for you to wake up every day and say, hey, I got to get to 10 locations and I got to get there like within 18 months, or I got to build out this territory as quick as possible. How do you think about that?
So I think you have to, crawl before you walk before you run. And I'm thinking about operationally, making sure our systems and our operations are dialed in and we're well-oiled machines so that we can replicate success as opposed to just have to figure it out again. Mm-hmm. I'd rather not have chaos. I really want to package it and have it replicable. And then the other thing is build a people bullpen. There's nothing I'd rather have than someone from within, growing and starting the next store, and opening up multiple locations at a time. I find that challenging. So I think that acceleration will take place when it's
so
ready.
Given that that you have the territory, does that put you at ease knowing that I'll build this out on my timeline and not be forced to grow at a pace that gets outside of your comfort zone?
So I could make an analogy here, but no, I think there is a bit of a gold rush land grab happening. Blink is well resourced and growing fast. Mm-hmm. Planet has a bunch of great locations. Retro does. So just waiting, other people would be able to come in and win. And I liken that. I mentioned earlier that I was a wrestler
Right.
in high school, and you can see there's different mentalities. Some people wrestle to win. They're just going to score points and try and pin regardless of what is on the scoreboard. They're just going to go in to win. And others wrestle not to lose. And so they'll take their time. They'll look at how much time is left. In this space, you have to play to win. You have to go and get those members and change those lives and give fitness at an affordable price. But just waiting for it to happen, other people will come in and take it.
Got it. When you look around and you see someone build, we'll do this on a no names basis, but when you see someone go to an area and you're like, oh, that they're not gonna, that lease is way too high. How do you kind of calibrate like your level of discipline and say, look, that they took that spot and there is a bit of a land grab, but that land grab is going to be worth zero. And that's just something that, that irrational development is the biggest issue in this sector.
I agree. I think when small players do that, I think if we wait it out, it won't be worthwhile for them. And when big players do, there's a bit of a portfolio going on where, they have enough stores that are winning that can hold up the stores that are losing.
Right.
Whereas I have to be profitable every month.
Right.
And so I have to have profitable growth every month. And so I just know that. And so I see some leases and they're asked of me and the rents are where they are. And, I don't even think about it. It's not worth negotiating.
Yeah, so we've only known each other for a couple months, but I sense that you enjoy the ride and that like you view this as a journey and you don't view it as like a sprint and we're trying to get somewhere. So how do you balance your life and your work? And I know Bezos from Amazon says there's no such thing as like work-life balance. It's like this is what I do, and here's like the scope of my work or the breadth of my work, I think is the term.
Sure, and I come at this from there's a great book called The E-Myth, E-Myth Revisited.
Sure.
And there's just a whole view of and perspective on your business. I come at it from that angle where I own my business and it doesn't own me. It's outside of me. If it was crushing me on top of me, then I would probably feel that stress to a different level every day. But it is outside of me. It's different from me, and that does help. And every day is a roller coaster. In the morning you think everything's great. You're going to sell for $1 billion. By noon you hate yourself, and by 3 o'clock you're even again.
Right.
But if you zoom out a little bit, and it's never a straight line up. But if you zoom in, it's up and down, up and down. But as long as overall over time it's going well, then that's the game I'm in.
Got it. So you talked about having the wish list would be, okay, I've got these great employees and they become managers and they oversee the next asset, and there's a level of trust, there's a level of training. One of our entrepreneurs that we just did a deal with said to a private equity firm, look, I'm not in the business of microwaving managers. I got a crock pot every one of them. And when they get crock potted, they're ready to go. But that's not something I can fast track. So my business is going to grow when I know I have the right people in the right places. So what do you do on the development side? And maybe talk about,
Sure.
your FD&Y crew that came with us and how you view your people. Because I think some people that get into this business try to hide behind the brand that they're in and basically say, well, that brand's going to generate X for me, and I don't really have to worry about who's running it.
Sure. I think I felt that way originally. And you learn that lesson hard and fast if you're looking, where the brand it's a great logo to have on your direct mail piece. It helps when you flyer. It will bring people in the door. But then when they're in the door, your people have to engage with them.
Sure.
So it's super important that we have, I call it the what, how, why, right? You have to tell them what they're doing, tell them how to do that. And I think the thing people often overlook is the why. Try and connect it to some larger why, and then try and connect it to, hey, what's in it for me? How can this help me? So a simple example of, get more checking accounts as opposed to credit cards. How do you turn that around to them? Like, well, that list we call of people that are going to go to collections and it's really uncomfortable, that list just got a lot shorter. Mm-hmm. So, we have to always have that emphasis and connect it to the larger picture. The business is going to save on credit card fees, and you're going to not have to have 200 people to call. Mm-hmm. And then from the E-Myth school of thought, there's a tool we use called a development meeting. And so every week I have a development meeting with my managers, my direct reports, and they have them with theirs. So it's at least an hour where we just carve out time, and it's me focused on you and your development, your growth, and how can I help you? How can I get out of the way to let you succeed? How can I come in and help you with something? What are you working on? Asking and engaging with them on how things are outside of work. Not that I can necessarily fix those problems for them, but just knowing about them paints the picture with more color, and who they are that they're bringing to work. So you're just more educated when you're feeling and experiencing different things with them.
Right. So we used to do the slide that said, okay, your Planet Fitness is basically like the business model is like a return on marketing and parking, and kind of like a glorified laundromat, not in a bad way. It is what it is, right?
Yeah, they're great.
And then you got Equinox is really like a return on invested capital, and I'm going to create an experience, and you're going to pay for it on a revenue per member. And then we talk about the groups that are in the middle market, and not in a bad way, but it's in the middle, and it's priced in the middle, and the experience is in the middle of those two. And we used to tell all the Gold's Gym operators, like, look, you're playing a game. It's called ROR, and it's return on relationships. And if you don't know the name of the group exercise instructor who's bringing in consistently 40, 50 people a day, to their class, like that's your core member base. So I feel like Crunch, given the Group X and given that content that people want, and we did some work, and Nikki's been working with us on all these stats, 25% of the people come into a health club to go to a group exercise class. So I feel like the winning strategy in the middle market is to be able to have a low cost option, but also to have the content and the community. So how do you view, the development of your group exercise and your personal trainers? It sounds like you're doing that with the development side, but also just, how you view your business model.
Sure. I think I'm right that the name of the book is Competing Against Luck, and it's talking about innovation. And so it's kind of like a sliding scale you were just referring to on the XY axis is, do a better job, don't do as good of a job, charge more, charge less. And so Equinox is the example of doing a better job and charging more. So that's great. They're in that quadrant. They do a great job. And Planet Fitness took the other side. Don't do as great of a job and don't charge as much. And there's plenty of consumers who want that.
Right.
I think Crunch does a great job in that quadrant in the top right corner of it. Mm-hmm. So we charge a little bit more and do a little bit more. And I think that's a good winning formula. So Crunch as a company and as a franchise takes great care of the development of the group fitness instructors and the personal trainers, plenty of content on Crunch University. So that's such a benefit that we get that I refer to it as a moat. It's a moat around our company. So there's all these franchises competing for the same market, the same group of people. That pie is not growing all that much, but we put a little moat around ourselves with this programming that you can only get at Crunch.
Right.
And they're looking ahead. They're great visionaries out there to the future saying, we have to do that same thing with small group training. So it's custom Crunch-only branded classes and a great curriculum to develop our instructors on amazing experiences. And that just furthers and deepens the moat around our company saying, you can go to, again, we'll remain nameless, any other competitor, but you can't get any of that stuff anywhere else. And that's a really big deal for us.
Got it. So as you look towards the future, is your current thinking that you're going to continually build out, a club a year? Is it something where down the road you might say, okay, look, I want to take in either a friend, or I want to take in a family member, I want to take in an outside investor and accelerate this more? What's your current thinking on where the business is today, where you want to take it? Obviously, you have a lot of options.
Mm-hmm. Sure. It's similar to what we said before, where there's that slow growth to, find your footing, find your balance, say, oh, you know what? We know the operations. We know how to do these things. We know how to communicate. We know how to get customers. And now, or just about now, is that inflection point where you take on some outside capital and say, let's put some fuel on this fire because we know how to make it work and we know that it does work. And now let's remove the financial bottleneck.
Yep. Great. Well, it's great to talk to you here live, and I think there's some good learnings here for our audience. So look forward to continuing our personal relationship, business relationship, joining us for future FDNY events, and building your team. And look forward to attending some of your new grand openings.
Thank you, and likewise, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Okay.